Hey, welcome everybody. Happy
Hello.
Breakaway Day.
Happy Breakaway Day.
Yes. Thanks everybody for joining us for this live stream to talk about the amazing first episode of Space 1999 Breakaway. Thank you also for everyone that has joined us in the chat. We have Darren M. Thank you very much. We have Adrian Sherlock, Damon Dark. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, Adrian. Sadiko here.
We have all of our regular cast of characters here. And there we go. Let's see who else we have. There we go. So, so amazing show. Many of us remember it from back in the day, as it were. And it is... we're living, thankfully, in an age where we have such access now to be able to really go back and enjoy shows like this. And again, it's a type of a show that has really stood the test of time. It's beloved by so many of us. And Breakaway is the title episode of the first series of Space 1999. The screenplay was written by George Bellac with an uncredited rewrite by story consultant Christopher Penfold. The director was Lee H. Katzin, and it had some other titles. Previous titles have included Zero G, The Void Ahead, and Turning Point. The final shooting script is dated 22nd of November 1973, and live action filming took place from Monday, the 3rd of December, 1973 to Friday, the 11th of January, 1974, with some holiday breaks in between there. And then a 3-day remount took place Friday, the 22nd of Feb, 1974 to the 26th of Feb. So if we go around and kind of sort of have a think about what your what your favorite part of this this episode was, how you got into Space 1999 as well, when you started watching it, that kind of a thing. So should we just do a little round table? So if I hand it over to my our commander, John Koenig, tonight, Archer Collin, what was your favorite? What is your overall? How did you get into Space 1999? What did you think of this episode?
I grew up with Gerry Anderson. My first question is, where are all the pink wigs?
I did try.
Because what I realised, but originally, Space 99 was originally supposed to be the second full season of UFO.
That's right.
And I'm still sure I noticed one of the dead pilots in the credit titles there reminded me of the aliens. I kept expecting him to have a slightly green tinge. I'm pretty certain I probably watched it. I'm old. I probably watched it from the first episode when it was first on.
Yeah.
It had Gerry Anderson's name attached, which was good enough for me.
Yeah.
And also it was it was coming out of the, I think in some way it was coming out of the end of the space race as well, because the space race had sort of ended in the Apollo mission. I think had probably finished before that. I can't remember when Apollo 17 was, but it was it was something new, something different, and in fact I knew both of the lead characters because I'd used to watch Mission Impossible.
Yes, as many of us did. Yeah.
Back when it was a proper TV show.
Yep.
It was Tom Cruise.
No, I said a proper TV show.
Oh, okay.
When it didn't dunk on Jim Phelps.
Right. So, PJ, what about you? What was your first exposure to Space 1999, and what are your overall thoughts on this episode?
My first exposure to this, believe it or not, yeah, I'm old as well, was when it first broadcast.
Yes.
I was into anything sci-fi. I grew up watching sci-fi. My mum used to call me Square Eyes. These are the type of programs I just sat in front of the TV watching day after day. Anything sci-fi was it. Doctor Who, Space 1999, even things like Lost in Space, stuff like that. And the thing that got me with this, believe it or not, apart from the cool outfits, it wasn't the story, it was the ego. Hence the reason why the ego's my avatar. Not to do with anything to do with the fact is I still love the ego because t-shirt.
Yes, that's a brilliant shirt.
Yeah, basically I've always loved the ship. I thought it was just one of those iconic looks to it.
Yeah.
And that's when I started, when I was watching it, I was thinking, it was one of my first ships of that type, of the time. One of the first toys I got of a spaceship. I had the usual stuff, the tanks, the action men and all that. That was the first toy I got. And that's what basically cemented it to me. Season 1, love it. Absolutely love it. I don't think, well, can I say there's no bad episodes, but there's nothing that turns you right off it. Season 2 was okay. It wasn't as good as season 1. Obviously, the changes. However, the first story, you would expect the usual, because some of the stuff I watched growing up was stuff that had come over from the States. The old Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, there was always that get in there, get it done, and then at the end there was always a cliffhanger. This one was a slow start. It wasn't the usual type of program I was watching, and it intrigued me. So it was a slow burner. It basically dragged you. It brought you in. It didn't drag you in with a something flashy bang. Look at this. It just basically introduced you to. There's all these astronauts stoating around the moon, checking things out, and then something's happening in the background, and it was an increasing story as it brought you in, and it, even at my youngish age, was just superb.
Yeah, that's so true. This episode starts out very, very quietly. It slowly builds. It draws you in from the scientific side of it. It's like you're a bit of a fly on the wall watching this, incredibly impressive looking operation on the moon, and then the story starts to ramp up, and that's what's great about it.
Yeah.
So, who's next? I've lost my names underneath.
Sorry.
So I have got
Stephen next.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm looking at. There we go. Stephen, how about you? What's your first memory of Space 1999, and what did you think overall of this story?
Well, I was probably about 4 years old when this thing first came out, maybe 2 or 3 when this first came out. So most of my memory is from reruns. And at the time, it was, one of the few science fiction shows on TV other than like Lost in Space and, Twilight Zone and Outer Limits. And I grew up on all of those. I was a big sci-fi geek at the time, long before Star Wars ever hit.
Yep.
But I owned the, what was it, an 18-inch Eagle, the toy, the original toy that they put out at the time. They put out this gigantic version of the Eagle. I had that with the action figures. I was completely enraptured with it. I liked it because Lost in Space was a silly Saturday morning cartoon TV show. Not a cartoon, but it felt like a cartoon.
Yes.
Yeah.
This felt like they were filming it on location. It was so genuine and so grounded too. Just the whole universe.
That's it. I mean, the practical effects in this were so good for the time. and they still stand up very well today, I think.
You look at the parts at the beginning where they're stoating around, he's picking the guy up and throwing him, he's jumping into the bug. It doesn't really look like wire work. It looked natural for what we understand the space.
Yeah.
So,
the attention to detail.
I fell in love with the tech. I wanted one of those, ray guns that they had. I think they made it as a toy, and I think I eventually got one, but they never made the communicator, or I was never able to get one as a kid. I thought those communicators were so cool.
Yeah. TV on it. Yeah. I wanted a wee telly that size.
Yeah. We finally got one too, thanks to Steve Jobs.
There's a vicious rumor going around that somebody used to use a motorcycle, a bicycle pedal as a Space 1999 gun, but I have no idea who that might be.
Some people I know use sort of like bits of marble, because my dad was a monumental mason, so he cut one for me in the shape.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's cool.
That must have had some heft.
I wasn't allowed to drop it because the marble was fragile, and
Yeah.
I went through 3.
Plus, just before I move on, a big shout out to the female characters. The young lady that she appears to be Japanese, but she's not. I don't know. Do you know the character I'm talking about? The brunette?
Yes, I do.
Xenia Merton.
Yes, yeah.
Sandra Benesh.
She comes off, I would imagine that Japan latched onto her when they saw it. She
has a very exotic look. Yeah. Yes, definitely.
She's Burmese.
Right, okay.
I thought she was some of that way,
Yes. Yeah, she's a brilliant character.
Yep.
So my young boyish soul really loved the ladies in the show. They were so grounded, serious, genuine, and capable the whole time through the whole show. All of them.
I loved Maya.
Oh yeah.
Wrong series.
She turned into animal, so she
was that series too. Yeah.
That series too. That was one of the highlights of series 2, and I just loved Maya just because somebody could change shape. Wow.
Did anybody notice there were Gerry Anderson dropped 2? There was a live stream podcast just before us, and there was one that dropped this morning called it was basically an explanation of how they could actually fit in how you can actually sort of fit season 1 and season 2 in the same timeline, because there's a number of differences. Including half the cast disappearing. But it was quite an interesting. It's only a short one, about 20 minutes, but Tale of Two Moonbases, I think it was called.
Yes. Yeah.
That showing why, how you can actually, even though there's dates that don't match and the like, how you can actually almost, the idea being that basically they're not. There's a split. And if you like, in some ways, season 1 is the original series, and season 2 is Kelvin timeline.
Nice.
To use much worse, but that's the general idea. Is that basically because they go to these time warps and all the rest of it here and there.
Yeah.
So the idea is that so you can actually get season 2 can actually be explains why there's different characters and so on.
Yeah, cool. So moving on, Roman, what was your first experience with Space 1999, and what did you think of this story overall?
Hi, Wen. So like Steven, I was very young. I was 5 when the series came out, and I didn't really latch onto it till later on. I was probably still pre-teen, so I was still very young. And the toy was the big thing for me, just like it was for Steven and PJ. I don't remember what year that came out.
No, neither do I. Maybe,
but I remember it was
the
big giant ship, and the big eagle, and the nose, the cockpit area could come off, and the thrusters could come off, and you could make a smaller shuttle out of it. Yep. And you had the little orange spacesuits, and those spacesuits are still some of my favorite spacesuits.
So
Now,
cool.
You
It
know,
had
they've
been
actually
probably-
been used in other stuff.
they're just it's a solid looking suit. It's a good design. So it'd probably been 40 years since I'd seen the show, though. So I had literally no memory of it other than impressions going into this first episode again. And what I took away from the first episode is government agency covering up problems so they don't lose funding. That's
What a
that's
surprise.
a very solid contemporary topic. Commissioner Simons is still the hero of the series, even though he's only in it for 2 episodes. So, it's interesting. I was doing a little bit of reading on the special effects, and the gentleman who did them for the show, they actually wanted him to do Star Wars, but he was engaged in this, so he didn't get let loose from the project to move on to that, which I think is fascinating. Wow. But I think Jacob Ironside in the chat said it had kind of a 2001 vibe through the first episode, and I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, that's a really good take. Yeah, totally agree.
So that's it for me.
Okay, Sadako, what's your how did you get started with Space 1999, and what did you think of this story?
Well, the first episode I saw there was a late night. It was a special. This was in the 90s. There was a special late night. It might have been on Channel 4 or something. It might have been a kind of long feature probably on Gerry Anderson, and they specially picked the episode War Games to show, and that was the very first episode of Space 1999 I saw. It was it's the one where they come across this race of telepathic people, and the base is hit, and Barbara Bain, she's actually shown this telepathic vision of what this peaceful world is like. And they're like, we don't want humanity to contaminate our world because your ways
I know.
Bring war everywhere. Yeah,
I know that story. Yeah.
Yeah, it was War Games, and that stuck with me a bit. And then later on, they did repeat the show, and they repeated it from the beginning. So finally, you'd see, okay, this is the first episode, and this is the one where they get blasted out, and it's like, oh, they're getting blasted out of orbit, and it's like, well, how are they going to resolve this? And it's like at the end, they don't. It's like they're just on course for somewhere new, somewhere different.
The unknown. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I did actually quite like that that bit at the end where they're getting the last news reports from Earth before they lose signal, and it's just
that was great.
Like,
I like that, but I thought, especially on the rewatch at the time, I didn't think about it. On the rewatches, we've been sending signals out for years and years. So the further they go, they should still be able to pick up signals, because it might be earlier ones. It might be right. Fair enough. They're watching Benny Hill. They're watching Gilligan's Island. But you see what I mean? It's just the fact that they cut out on the rewatch. I thought, well, they shouldn't technically cut out. They'd just be picking up older signals from the Earth.
I think
they'd have to be traveling faster than light to do that, though.
Yeah, I also think that the use of that whole scene where the signal just sort of fades out.
Yeah,
I totally get where PJ's coming from, because I mean it doesn't pass the scientific test in some ways, but at the same time
it wouldn't.
Yeah, but that scene is so impactful because it really cements the fact that now they are totally cut off.
Yeah,
they're just totally cut off, and it's that you do feel that like in the pit of your stomach when you're watching that scene. It's like, oh man, this is it. This is the last voice from Earth we may ever hear.
See, when I first saw this, Space 1999, I thought it was about them discovering a new planet.
Yeah.
I had no idea where it was going to go. They basically, believe it or not, we didn't have any spoilers at the time.
Yeah.
Yes, it was on the newspaper. When you're looking down, it would say Space 1999 about the moon being blasted out of Earth's orbit. But when I saw it, it wasn't a case of I read it in the newspaper. There was this coming on. It was just part of my viewing time. This came on, So I thought it was all about this new planet, and when the moon was blown out of the Earth's orbit, I was going, "Whoa!" It changed, subverting my expectations. As they say nowadays.
John,
Yeah. So
Johnson.
yeah. So have you got any of the? Have you seen any of the models or anything over the years, Sadako? Have you picked anything like that up yet? Or
Oh no, not really. I only I just I'd occasionally see the show on repeat. I
yeah.
think like in Liverpool, there's a place called Quiggins, which usually has some. It used to be a place that did sci-fi kind of memorabilia, and I do remember maybe seeing the odd eagle in there. But I never picked it up. I was kind of the first place I would go would be the old novelizations. They had like the Tron novelization in there. They had the old Doctor Who novelizations, and some of the old Star Trek novelizations too. But no, I haven't got any memorabilia from. The only thing I've got is the DVD. I have to say, on DVD, this episode looks fantastic. It looks cinematic, and the moon, like when they're venturing out over Area 1 to Area 2, it looks like a genuinely alien, eerie place.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
I actually think the moon looks better than it did on the NASA one we watched.
Oh, well, yeah. No surprise there.
Yeah. What was the one we watched about
For All Mankind?
For All Mankind. Yep. I thought this moon looked better.
Yeah.
Well, the base is certainly more sexy.
Oh, the base is absolutely superb. But even the fact is, the moon itself, when they're traveling over the moon, it just looked out of this world. It didn't look as if they were just filming in some canyon in the States.
Yeah.
It looked out of this world. And I suppose that was the difference. I suppose when I first saw it, it just looked real, shall we say, to a 12-year-old.
Yeah. So, Alex, what's your first memory of Space 1999, and what did you think of this story?
Well, when I was younger, I was never a fan of Space 99 because of Thunderbirds. But when it came onto the BBC and I caught it for the first time, I was absolutely amazed about the model effects and all this and that. Now, unfortunately, PJ, I'm not a fan of the eagle.
What?
Oh.
That's only because you've got no taste. I can't help you.
Not grasping the eagle.
Nerd fight.
However, I still like the way season 1 was science heavy, especially when they came to the episode Black Sun. Black Sun was very interesting. The way they thought it was going to be the end, but no, they get saved by a higher being. And it was like they were like going through a wormhole in the way with Black Sun. And I've got to say, they did do great compilation tapes to this program.
Yes.
Where they linked all the episodes together.
Oh, that's cool.
If it wasn't for the compilation videos, I think we would never had, nobody would have got into Space 99 more, because it's vaguely back in them days, it was repeated once or twice, but it was hard to get the episodes in the right order to watch.
Yeah.
But in the medium of today, thanks to DVDs all the way along up to digital release, everyone can watch it now. So it's still open to a vast audience compared to trying to spot the episodes.
Alex, was it how continuity heavy was Space 99? I mean, could it be watched out of order? Obviously, beyond the pilot. Obviously, the pilot had to be watched first, but could it be watched out of order?
I think it could. It could. But
it had to be in sequence, but on the whole, it was quite episodic. You could watch some out of order.
Yeah.
Because one of the first videos I got, I think it was episode. There was 3 episodes, and they were the same idea as Alec was saying. It was basically they were almost linked, although they were episodic and there was no direct link with them, but they were along the same lines. So if it was Eagle based, it had 3 stories based around the ego or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do want to mention something also about the first episode, Breakaway, is the way they done the model effects for it, especially when the moon was projected out of the orbit of Earth, is really on the basis of 2001.
Yeah.
And
but there was no apes bunching their chest in a big monolith.
No, but it's just the way you see those effects, and you go, they've really stepped themselves up this time.
Yeah.
However, I will always be a fan of season 1. I'm not a fan of season 2, I'm afraid. But I was absolutely glad that they did like a special sort of 10-minute episode for the fan conventions, or where they found a planet in the end to settle down on, and they abandoned the moon. I think
that's really cool that they did that.
I've got one that I thought that it's on the stream I got it from. It was advertised as season 3, but apparently it turns out actually it's 2 episodes in season 2 put together. But I see you're saying about in and out of order. It depends. I mean, it's another one of these ones because, for example, Commissioner Simmons, the hero. I'm kind of he's about the, he's in it. Then does he not get killed trying to get back to Earth? Or was that in the remake?
He survives. He survives in this episode. I don't know how if he survives the series.
No, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Except that he appears in episode 14. So 14 stories in, Simmons is still there, despite. So I think it's another one that were, depending on what order you can watch in various orders.
Maybe he was taking a nap.
Yeah. I mean, you've the thing. It's another. You just got to go. You just look at some of the guest stars that you've got in it. Right? I'm literally just going down IMDb. Right? So all I've got is the one image from these ones, and I've got Christopher Lee. I've got Joan Collins. I've got Leo McKern. I've got Peter Cushing. And of course, this series, as an overall series, it stars 2 Brian Blesseds. Brian Blessed is in 2 episodes within each season.
That's funny writing of the 70s, though, where they wanted to have guest stars.
Yeah,
but you're having guest stars on a moon that's flying away from the Earth that has a population of about 300 people.
Yeah,
that's just funny 70s writing. I find it amusing from a 2022
in all fairness, some of them they did actually find them in other planets. So
yeah.
Okay, if you find them, it makes sense. But if they were just kind of tucked away, and now you're getting to the most random man on the base, that's again, I just find it amusing. But one of the things I did really like about the episode and that 2001 kind of vibe was the entire opening scene of the commander coming out on the Eagle to the station, getting his brief from the commissioner while they're going out there, and the crew member brings him his coffee and all that. That was just such a familiar vibe.
Oh yeah, it's almost shot for shot with 2001,
right?
Yeah, that's very true. That's a good point.
I also like the fact that the commander on the base is getting relieved because things aren't going well, though things aren't getting reported that they're not going well. So this poor guy, he's just a bag man. He's like, I'm just trying to do my job up here. They're not letting me do my job.
And he wasn't happy about it. He just said, I'll be in my office if you want to talk over. I'm in a huff.
I think we said about the guest stars. It's something else that I think has changed with attitudes towards genre, because I mean anything. When you look almost anything, you say in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. How many times did Columbo arrest Patrick McGowan for being the murderer?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2-3 times. Well, I don't know if it was, but yet now, if you see, yet nowadays, the fan base, possibly because we're so interconnected, but nowadays, fan bases are such that if you see someone, I mean, even go back, there was still, even in the 90s, JMS had to come out and say, no, the fact that Ed Wasser played a character in the pilot of Babylon 5, this is just purely casting. There wasn't Mr. Morden on that hidden.
Yeah, I heard that rumor that they were trying to actually pin it that
That it wasn't.
He was him, and then he actually transferred and he got captured and he did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because he wanted to be a recurring character. But nowadays, if you see someone in a show, I mean, how many people? Well, I don't know. How many people here actually really wondered if Donna's grandfather had actually been the cop that travelled with Peter Cushing? Because Bernard Cribbins, but Bernard Cribbins was in one of the Doctor Who movies.
It's a nice. I feel like it was a nice callback, even though it was kind of non-canon. It's a bit like I mean that wasn't. But yeah, no, I mean it's like it's significant, but not in the terms of in fiction significant. Yeah. It's out of fiction. It's significant because fans know that. And I think it was kind of written in to be significant out of fiction.
Yeah. But I mean, these days I think fans are so, perhaps just because we've got the internet, but we're so connected. You see someone appears in a series, and if you see them appear again in another episode, you expect them, and usually they are probably going to be the same character or connected character.
Well, you look what they've been doing with Doctor Who. You had Peter Capaldi. Oh, well, he's just taking the face of somebody seen before, Colin Baker.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody even mentioned it. Well, Colin took the face of somebody seen before, another Gallifreyan. But whereas now they're saying, well, he's just took his face because, well, he was in it before. And it is that aspect of it. Believe it or not, we don't actually think these people are real. We know they're actors.
What?
But nowadays,
they're not real?
Nowadays, people actually, as you said, if a character appears in multiple episodes of a program, it has to be the same character.
Yeah. Remember Star Trek did this with Mark Leonard. They used him, obviously, as the Romulan commander and then as Spock's father, Sarek.
Correct.
They did it with David Warner. He was in the movies, and then he was in the series as the Kardashian. Not Kim, but the evil Kardashian. Important distinction. But he looked different in each thing. And Mark Leonard really didn't so much. I mean, although he was in Star Trek: The Motion Picture as a Klingon commander.
Yeah.
But as a Romulan and a Vulcan, they look pretty much the same. But we, of course, realize because we have a human thinking brain that it's not the same character.
Yeah. Right.
So, but it's funny, like I said, on this series, I don't know. I find it interesting that was it Alex who mentioned it that the commissioner doesn't show up again for 14 episodes.
Yeah.
Again, that's a little bit of weird writing. Yeah. But the composition of the first episode was very solid, though, from start to finish. And Stephen mentioned that you knew when the parts of the play were going to change from scene to scene to scene when you were moving into that next phase. But it didn't feel clunky. It just felt okay. Now we're moving on to the next act. And I thought that was it was good. I was surprised at how well the writing for me stood up for as long, for as old a show as it had been and as long as it had been since I'd even thought about it, that it worked very well. Now I did have some issues with the science stuff, but that's the suspension of belief or the sake of story.
Because you look at it, they're trying to actually stop the accumulation of magnetic energy. And what do they use to take the nuclear power away? Magnets. And you're sitting there thinking,
no, it was funny, and that whole mission looked like. Remember, I'm a helicopter guy. That looked like the vert rep missions we used to do from ship to ship when we were hauling cargo. It looked almost identical. It was kind of hilarious. but everyone on the moon would have died at the end of the episode. There's no way that's like I said, that's a suspension of belief so you can have a show. How did they survive? Because they had to survive.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't have a series.
In hindsight, we look at it and go, well, right, fair enough. They've got the habitat, they've got the power because a nuclear thing would give them power. But where's the water? The food you can regrow from seeds, but where's the water?
Well, they probably had water recycling systems.
Yeah, but eventually you're going to run out of water to recycle.
Perhaps.
You're not going to run out of water to recycle. Everyone has to come out.
Your own recycle.
Yeah. You're all talking piss. Shut up.
I just wanted to acknowledge as well Adrian Sherlock Damon Dark, who I think is joining us from Australia in the chat. He's been dropping some amazing information. And in one of the comments he's got that he's written a pair of books called Space 1999 Viewers Guides, one for each season, and he discusses some viewing order thoughts in those, which is what we were talking about earlier. But he's definitely dropping some really interesting, cool facts in the chat there. So definitely worth checking out. Thanks for that, Adrian. That's amazing. I'm just looking through. I was just noticing it earlier. There was a big marketing push, he said, for Space 1999 in Australia. Competitions, prizes, trips to Disneyland, swap cards, toys, alpha shirts. So it was obviously quite big there.
I had the cards, so that.
Did you?
Yeah.
What year was that, I wonder, that they did that big marketing push?
The toys came out not long after the first season. So I think it was 75, 76, the Eagle started coming out. And I think they started doing that. That's why between the two seasons, so you had the toys, the cards, because it was something it was on and it was quite popular. So they got pushed out. It's the same idea as you got the Thunderbird stuff when Thunderbirds was on. So it wasn't a case of after Thunderbirds came off, people realised, we need to do toys. And I think they came out round about that time. I remember getting them when I was about 12, 13. So it wasn't later, because I think at 16 I would have probably went, nah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not that surprised it was popular in Australia. I mean, we did have I think probably the only renter Aussie we had in this country at the time was Nick Tate. I'm not sure there were any other renter Aussie actors.
Adrian says 74, 75 they came out just before.
Yeah.
That would have been part of the push.
I noticed too, he said that in Australia, the commissioner dies in episode 2 because they showed it in a different order.
Yeah, I'm reasonably certain because he doesn't seem to be in any of the other episodes. Well,
that makes more sense because there is that. Then if you do that, then you don't have that big unexplainable gap.
Yeah.
I've got a real problem.
You mean they actually showed it out of order here? That sounds really weird. Why would they do that?
In Australia.
In Australia, they did it right. I'm saying, they showed them out of order.
So why would they? Yeah, why would they do that? I'm not too sure.
Well,
bastards.
That they do that in America a lot too, and I heard Joss Whedon's explanation that the producers on TV are like, what's going to be our entry episode for the audience, and it's an audience consideration. Like, what's the most palatable order? What introduces the universe better, or makes it possible for the audience to get on board quicker? Like, introduce the romance maybe in the second episode, like that sort of thing. Yeah. So that people can start, simping, so to speak.
See, I always found that weird because they want you to be introduced to the world. So they throw you in, and then the next episode or two after that, they're introducing the world that you've just been thrown into. Whereas me, I like getting introduced to the world. And
they're producers, PJ. I mean, no one said that they were intelligent. They're producers.
I suppose that's like saying a politician and a producer.
Yeah, exactly.
Dead, but just different occupations.
Yeah. Death, taxes, and TV show orders.
Yeah. But it's just crazy because of that, because you want to see the world getting built. There's some ones where it throws you in because the world behind it is designed with part of the story that you learn why they got to that point. There was a Judge Dredd, believe it or not, a 2000 AD story called Dead Man, and it was about this guy all cut to shreds and no memory, and he basically starts as somebody brings him back to health, and he basically brings law to the town just for he sees things happening, he doesn't like it, and it turns around it was Judge Dredd. But you had to, if they told you this is Judge Dredd going through this to get there, the story would work. Whereas you build up with this guy going through his memory loss to get to him, and then at the end of it, you find out who he is. You go, ah. So there's certain stories like that, but I want to see a story mostly start at the beginning, introduce us to the world, the characters, then put the world and characters and plot all together.
And that's why serial television has become more popular. That's why we have long format streaming episodes that are connected. But back in the day, and I've heard this from several TV guys, that they made the shows and were asked to make the shows so that they could be shown out of order in a rerun model.
Yeah. See, I can understand to an extent, like if you've got the same cast throughout, like, but if you've got a character who disappears for 14 episodes, it doesn't work. So
yeah.
But the first couple of episodes have to be in order because you have to set up the premise of the show, the characters, and bring the two of them together.
Yeah.
And why? I mean, why are these events happening? We don't. If you aren't moving in order, then you go from step A, B to step G. Things aren't going to make sense, and the impact of the episode is largely going to be lost because you don't understand why characters' motivations are what they are, or what events took place to cause, all of these things to happen.
And there's certain things that can work like that. You look at something like MASH, you don't need to watch that in order.
Right.
But you can watch any episodes at any time, even the very first episode. I think the only one is the last episode because obviously the farewell and the finish.
Well,
But even the first episode onwards, you could watch them out of order.
You probably need to watch them in blocks when you got seven major characters changing, like the
BJ Honeycutt,
Honeycutt
from Tapper John, or Colonel Potter from.
So within each season, you could watch them out of order.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. So there's certain ones that you can watch out of order because they're short, they're only meant for comedy, and you know the premise anyway. But other ones you need to watch in some sort of order, especially if there's bits happening here and there.
Thank goodness there's an entire generation of kids that will not even know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I just was checking out the chat, and Adrian had put in a little earlier, he said he gathered that Lou Grade had used Australia as a test market, and he said there was even a tour bus with people dressed as Alphans which visited his supermarket.
Funny.
How cool is that?
Wow, Australia was
I would love
hopping.
to get one of the outfits, just starting around looking.
You could pull it off, PJ.
I'm wondering if anybody has photographs of this, like from that time period, still has photographs of that event that they brought their kids to or something.
Someone will have it somewhere, but
sure.
Yeah, they must, right? I mean, must have been a thing that people like whip their cameras out. Like, there's aliens among us. Like, get the kids to pose with them.
Although it was the 70s, so the outfits might not have been as out of place as we think they are now.
Yeah, that is true.
You look at the chairs. I loved those chairs, and it was almost like the shuttle, the white molded.
Oh yeah.
They were just so cool. I believe it or not, I remember going to a friend's house and they had those type of furniture, and I thought, wow, this looks like space. Now I realise it looks tacky as well.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was all the typical futuristic stuff. You saw a lot of programs like that, and it was all this molded plastic. And then it became normal in the houses, and you realise that it's molded plastic, and it's not as futuristic.
It's not
as we would
spacey
like
at all.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they did actually. One of the other aspects of the show that I liked was when the commander got to the station. He didn't just blunder in. He came in and he started making assessments about what was going on. He talked to the medical personnel. He wanted to do a flyover of the zones that were affected.
Yep.
All of these things. It wasn't just an administrative, routine. He wanted to actually get involved and know what was going on his base.
That's right. Yeah.
I think it's like there was no easy explanation for what was going on. It was like it seemed to be suggesting a science beyond their understanding of what is causing these men to go nuts. And if it's not radiation, what is it? And so it's like it's this need to understand the unknown. Something that doesn't make sense. It's like in a way that it felt like maybe this is what this series is going to be about: is areas of space where science as we know it goes completely off the scale.
Right. Yeah. That you could have turned it into an anthology like that too, where it switched to a different location after they lost the moon, and another scientific tragedy occurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I loved about this series? The space. I know it sounds silly, but the space and the sets. Because you remember watching things like Star Trek, it was on the bridge or in the captain's quarter.
Me too.
Yeah.
This is what made Deep Space Nine impressive as well.
Just expanded. And
Do you know the scene I really loved too was when he's in his Commander Koenig is sort of in his office, and it's all like walled off, and you think, oh, he's in like his own private office, and then the whole wall just slides away.
Yep.
And he's overseeing the whole. That is the coolest thing.
Yeah, they had that in Deep Space Nine too. It was actually kind of Cardassian in a way, after the fact, in hindsight. But as soon as I rewatched it this morning, I was like, "Oh my God, that's straight out of like D9. Stole that."
Probably.
On B Cardassian architecture.
And we have somebody new in the chat. Welcome, Carlo. He says, I'm trying to find out if a black sun was the very first black hole shown on screen. I mean, with a story about its properties like the black hole in 1979 and Interstellar many years later. That's a good question.
Yeah,
Whether that was actually the first depiction of a black hole.
Colin and I have a deep space in our heart for this kind of stuff. We love the lore or the etymology of fiction. It's such a fascinating subject.
I know the episode, the Star Trek episode Tomorrow is Yesterday. It starts like right after the aftermath of the Enterprise falling into a black hole. Like they escaped the black hole, and because they had to go so fast, it sent them into a time which sent them back to 20th century. But it's like it's one of those. The story starts when they've just escaped it, so like you don't actually see it. It's not depicted.
Right.
Yeah. Adrian says Canadian series The Star Lost planned to show a black hole, but the show was axed before it happened.
Huh.
That's not one I'm familiar with.
I'm not. I don't recognize the name.
I remember it was a little bit like no, I'm thinking of a book. It's similar to how it was. Basically, it was basically you imagine the ship from Silent Running where they've got those biomes.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was based on a generation ship, and each dome was a different society, if you like. And it was a little bit like that, and your heroes were going from dome to dome, having different adventures in each dome. Basically, I'm sure he's reminding me of something else as well, but I can't think which reminding me of. I know there's. But actually, yeah, it's a little bit like that in that the different
cultures
and the rest of it. But basically, I mean, they're literally domes or separated.
Adrian says the ships were like the ones in Silent Running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think
It's actually quite good. I might actually have to have a look, see if I can find it. YouTube
I think
or something like that.
It's one of these ones I think where they don't know they're on a starship. They don't know they're lost. And
The Orville.
If I remember right,
in the Orville. Remember the one about the generation ship?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's got to be at least a dozen anime from the 70s and 80s that did exactly the same storyline. Like that was the big climax of the story is, holy crap, we're on a spaceship.
Yeah.
I've got a book somewhere called wait a minute, where is it? Amazon. It's this book called Archship 24 Alpha Centauri, and I think I think it's a series of novels. And I think the third novel is where they got this Archship, and the third novel is about the third generation, where it's like generations down. The entire ship is just evolved into these gangs of tribal kind of youths who they've completely forgotten.
Bit Lord of the Flies, then.
That's what I was thinking, Lord of the Flies.
Mission of the Darians. I'm pretty certain that was the same setup in Space 1999, wasn't it? Where they'd forgotten that they were they'd forgotten that they were on a ship.
Or like in
the
first. It's a bit like
the Orville episode. They'd forgotten they were on a ship.
But bit like the Face of Evil too in the Doctor Who episode. Yeah.
Do you know the first time I remember, even out of all the stuff, the first time I remember them talking about arc ships or generation ships or whatever was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
That was the first time I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
About that. Then since then, going back and watching stuff that I'd seen before, and they're talking about it and I understood what they were talking about, because obviously when it was on, it was something I didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
They got in. Well, the Golden featuring third arc obviously landed in Hollywood.
Well, that's true.
I just had a crazy idea of if the creators of this show had put just a little bit of thought into the science of what they were executing, they could have had the moon go on a circular orbit.
Yeah.
And it could have come back to Earth like, okay, kind of Deus Ex Machina, but it could have approached Earth at like a spherical orbit or a looped orbit, because it couldn't escape the sun. So it just kind of turned around and went back the other way.
Yeah, so it could be on like a Halley's Comet orbit.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you come back so much later, the Earth is no longer the Earth they recognize. See, you should have written this stuff, Stephen. Except
we're much more mature. This is in hindsight, so.
Yeah, and Adrian, I know the art in space now, but when I first watched it, I didn't understand what it was talking about. Now, after rewatching it, I understood it. But the first time I remember them talking about it was Hitchhikers. I suppose I understood it by that time. And then going back, rewatching all this, I realised what they were talking about. But I never even noticed, because it was just the story. Tell me the story. I didn't really bother about where it was set with a lot of these early ones. But that's just me. So,
it's something to think about, that if the moon left, they would have frozen to death, right? Wouldn't there Did they ever had air conditioning issues?
I think there was one. Was it not? There was. They were overheating.
Yeah.
There was one that they were overheating, which was the complete and utter opposite.
Yeah.
But then again, the thing is, they would have been freezing anyway. So because they were on the moon, they were outside the Earth's atmosphere, so they would have still had to. It was below zero, so they would have still, their energy would have been the thing keeping it all hot.
Oh, yeah.
So even if they're going out of the solar system, same principle applies, I suppose.
Well, it all has to do with the sun, doesn't it? I mean, that's what science says.
Yes.
Well, it depends where they're getting their energy from, I suppose.
So if they get their energy from the nuclear generator, I'm assuming a nuclear generator keeps them going. So there's no as if they've got a pump up there, actually, just a generator going.
Right, but what I'm talking about is that over a period of time, the moon itself would change temperature because it was further away from the sun.
It would become more Pluto-like.
Yeah.
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 Just
So much
another
science.
Yeah, you
I
can't look
know.
at the science too hard on this one because if you do, it unravels rapidly.
Yes, it
It
does. You
just,
do have to
like I
sort
said,
of.
suspend belief, suspend belief.
Right,
It's
right,
yeah,
right.
you have to treat it like, a true science fiction story as opposed to, but I think the interesting thing about that is you want to believe that the science is real because they make it sound so real. They're so
Yeah.
cerebral about the delivery and the way the pacing of the episode is, and
Yeah.
They're not
it's
talking down to you; they're talking up to you.
Yeah,
yes,
no, the
correct.
scripting is done well. I mean, the way they discuss the matters. Again, we have putting the science aside, talking about the way they stored the atomic waste. Where it is on the moon, what the impact is going to be if the atomic waste blows. All of these things, they sound in context of the show, they sound possible.
Right. Yeah,
Devil
this
in
is
the-
what a lot of people are having trouble with this current constant turning to the camera and putting a joke to the audience
Yeah,
and breaking the continuity of the jeopardy, of the tone, of the
Yeah.
events transposing. And then they go about not performing military procedure. They're bucking the system within the storyline itself. It's like all of these things break that reality.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
like as well about it? See, remember the bit where the guy was smashing the window?
Yeah, I was just
There was
gonna say.
there was the explosive decompression, but nowadays there would be things flying out that window.
I was
all
thinking the
for
same thing when I
minutes
saw
and
that
minutes.
scene.
It
Yeah.
was just a case of boom, a couple of things flew out, and then that was it. Whereas nowadays you would have it blows out, and then everything gets sucked out
Gets
of
sucked
the
right
whole
out.
room.
Yeah.
And it's that to me was quite good the way they did that. So it wasn't a case of like you always see the one where a bullet hole and then everything gets sucked out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, they've done ones like even Red Dwarf did it. There was a hole and somebody had their back against it.
I was Hoagie the Rogie.
Yeah, it was Hoagie,
Well,
but there's been other ones where somebody they've done something and they've put a tray over it because it stops the
That was the
suction
moon.
as much
That
as
was
possible.
that was the moon base in Doctor Who.
Yeah, but that's
Well,
what I'm saying. Things like that, I've done it to an extent as if that air is going to suck everything out of that room. As soon as the air goes out of the room, nothing's going to get sucked out, but they imply that that is going to suck everything out of the room through that wee hole. Explosive decompression, and that was it. It wasn't sucking every piece of furniture out.
They did it very well in an episode of UFO where they're on the moon base and there's an alien shoot. They get a very small hole shot in the window, and the first thing the one of the guys actually notices, he notices that there's a birthday balloon is expanding because it's the air's creeping up very slowly at first. So they don't actually. I mean, even though they're astronauts and presumably would be trained to recognise anoxia, they're not. It's not bad enough. Once he sees this, and then it starts cracking. Then of course it gets to the point of the damn burst. But as you say, yeah, I mean,
wow, that balloon thing is a very clever visual idea.
Yeah, they
What
did
a great
it in
idea.
For All Mankind with the candles in the cake. Remember, they were getting heavier because of the gravity. It wasn't suddenly everybody was down in the ground. It was very slow. The gravity was increasing, and the cakes were the candles were sinking into the cake.
I wanted to bring that up as a point with the moon escape. With the breakaway. It wouldn't. I don't think we understand acceleration on that kind of scale enough to even criticize it right now.
Oh no.
And we don't know what the potentials were of the nuclear explosion as an engine to push the moon in the first place. We're not taking into consideration how much the moon would flex because it's not a solid block of granite. It's actually more like a beehive.
Somebody told me it was hollow.
Yeah, well, I mean, hollow like our bones are hollow. You know, like there's a lot of air.
Just don't
on
say it's an
bones.
egg, whatever you do.
No.
That was such a bad episode.
Oh my God.
Wait, Wendy. Egg-based alpha wouldn't have the same ring to it, would it?
No,
I'll tell you
no,
what, though,
definitely it'd be scrambled eggs.
Well, okay, who's going to actually say it first? If there was a moon base alpha, where was beta?
I was about to say exactly that. Something that occurred to me is the fact that it's called Moonbase Alpha suggests that there are other moon bases.
Well,
Well,
not
I
necessarily.
thought
It's just
maybe-
it's the first in a sequence, so you don't necessarily have a beta or a Charlie. You
You
just
might
know you have
actually
an
moon-based
alpha.
alpha is the first one. If they build a second one, then they might call it beta.
I mean,
Yes.
I thought we'll make it might be on another moon, on one of the moons. But the thing is, it's a little bit like you think about it. There's never been a monarch in history who has been known as the first. After their time, when another one comes along, they're the first. But when Queen Victoria, for example, was never Queen Victoria the first. If we ever have another Victoria,
She'll be known as the first. Yeah.
Victoria the first. So yeah,
Right.
all you've got is you've got moon base. It's, again, UFO going back here. The UFO, it was just moon base. Even though there were other moon bases, because there was a Russian moon base on there, there were private moon bases on there. It was
Yeah,
only
but
ever known as
each
a moon
country
base.
names them whatever they want. So
Yeah, but
American moon base is just the moon base because they're only talking about the American one.
Right.
So yeah,
Keep it
so
simple.
yeah. But I can't remember any other ones that maybe even went out to another base or anything, even if it was a case of it wasn't in use, it was basically a storage facility or something. But
I have the perfect explanation as to where the other moon bases are. The Membari needed them in the war against the Shadows.
Ah.
it wasn't the Minbari, it was the Vorlons that needed them. So they took them out of time.
Yep, that's why they're not there. They don't appear in any future
Well played.
episodes.
Well played.
Um,
I've got a,
Adrian popped something in the. Just noticed Adrian popped something in the chat. It said I would put 1999 on the Doctor Who / Sapphire and Steel level, but the fact the humans take it seriously as scientists is great, and that's an interesting comparison with Sapphire and Steel in tone, because it does kind of make me think, because we've seen that now. I mean, I've seen it now. Darren would have seen it, many years ago, but we've watched that together now, and yeah, that has a sort of very ethereal, very cerebral tone.
Yeah, it has.
I
still got a video of Sapphire and Steel in my collection.
Yeah, that's a cool series. That would be a fun one to talk
It's
about.
something I
sometime.
sorely miss, and it's the torch I light when people start talking about Spaceballs.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, can we have, please, just one per year, a serious science fiction movie where it's like
they're talking science, not actually talking rubbish.
like
You mean like
Moon?
Moonfall?
Oh, no, how about just the movie Moon with Sam Rockwell?
Oh,
That was
that's
good. That was a great movie.
film.
Yeah,
That was totally serious.
the first season of The Expanse.
Yeah, also very good. Yeah, exactly. It felt like really good sci-fi, just like a real return to, like you were saying, Stephen, just a proper science fiction, story, and it, without cramming in, the elements that that they try and force it into other markets that they think they have to sort of dumb it down.
Yeah.
To do that.
Solaris, that's the movie I'm thinking of. Both versions, I think, of Solaris are also top-notch science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
I
Adrian
was
says it's scientists trying to grasp the inexplicable, which is a great, again, a really good, take on it.
By the way, the thing about the moon's journey, I mean, it does go into various other star systems, doesn't it? And now the interesting thing is that, people think, well, is the moon traveling that fast? Well, is it the fact the moon's traveling that fast through systems, or is it the galaxy that's moving? Because if you think about it, the galaxy is not a standstill, is it?
Right.
Like, if, for instance, for instance, if Back to the Future, you apply the science of Back to the Future seriously, if the DeLorean went back 50 years, it wouldn't arrive on Earth because Earth would have been like
no.
5 years.
You have to have placement as well. Placement is part of time travel.
Yeah, I mentioned that when I was on the stream talking Judge Dredd with Mr. Brown's Alliance. Strontium Dog, 2000 AD, Strontium Dog, he had temporal grenades. So he would throw the grenade and it would send them back in time 5 seconds. Yeah. So they would end up in space.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first times I saw someone actually saying, well, the Earth moves. So they send them back in time means that 5 seconds ago, the Earth was a wee over there. So that's where they end up.
Even if it's come back to the same point in its orbit, the sun has moved around the galaxy.
Yeah.
The galaxy has moved. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I have a nice anime explanation as to how that bomb could achieve the goal of putting you just 5 seconds behind without removing you from the Earth. And that would be the effect of gravity and relativism of
you
gravity.
Mentioned that as well, huh? We discussed this in the Mr. Brown's because you mentioned that exactly. But but the idea behind it is actually somebody thinking outside the box, as in you're traveling in time. Well, that doesn't work because you've just established that you can't travel in time, because if you travel in time, unless you've got a spaceship, you're in the middle of space.
Well, I suppose you could do it if they're traveling at relative speeds, but then they've got to slow down every time they come into they come into a system. Multiverse.
I just what PJ just said reminded me of that one of my favorite Red Dwarf gags. The one when they get the time machine on Starbug, and let's go to the 1422, and they go back to 1422. It's like, where are we? We're still in space.
Exactly, we're still in space.
Yeah, only now we're in space in the 15th century.
Yeah.
Comedy can get away with some crazy stuff. This is what made Futurama so much fun, because it was comedy.
Oh, yes.
So they could get away with murder. It's like this, they could explain the science away in a single joke.
Go into a suicide booth, and it was a joke.
Yep. Yeah, and yet so prophetic.
Yes.
Well, so 2022.
Yeah.
Let's get back to 1999.
Oh, by the way, this is a significant date. We're doing this on the significant date because this is the 13th of September. That's when the moon breaks away.
Yes, that's right.
It's also someone's birthday as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Alex, you mentioned this to me earlier. We have to wish Barbara Bain a very happy birthday.
Oh, wow.
The wonderful, beautiful Barbara Bain, who I absolutely love in this particular role. I mean, I loved her in Mission Impossible as well, but I really love her character in Space 1999, especially in the first season. She's very
she's still working.
She's feminine, but she's very professional and very capable, and she's able to stand up to Koenig's intensity of his personality, particularly when he's sort of challenging her in the first episode, to find out, what's going on, how come she hasn't found out yet, and really pushing her. And she remains very, very calm, and yet she stands her ground with him as well. And I just loved the way she, she portrayed that.
Do you know she's actually still working? So she is.
Wow.
Our most recent what she's done, she was in Space Command, and she's announced something called Something's Happened: The Untold Story of Mice and Men, and that's been announced, and she's in that, so she's still working. 1931 she was born.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Wow.
And Adrian Sherlock, I said Barbara Bain and the son of Barry Morse, both born on this day.
Wow.
Blimey.
Yeah, it's calm and strong, Adrian. Yeah, that's. I just love her energy in that.
What's an interesting point that some, I think they did with, I think they made a point of in a couple of times in Star Trek as well, is that a doctor, chief medical officer, is always outside chain of command.
Yeah.
Because
so she's the one that can actually turn around to the commander and say,
yeah,
yep, because you're not fit for it.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
can, you know, so
Yeah, exactly.
she, you know, and she has to, or he or she has to be the personality that can stand, can stand up to that.
Correct.
But
Yeah,
yes,
there's a
exactly.
great scene between her and the commander when when all the men finally die, the 9 that she, or the few that have, and he turns around to her, and I forget the exact quote, but he basically says, like, "Hey, lady, I'm thinking about the human element." And she was like, she has this look on her face like, "Whoa, did I forget the human element? Was I being too scientific?" And it's like, he reminds her that she's still a human being, that she,
You're a woman, I'm a man.
And then
that
not
he's
long
a
after
great
that,
commander.
basically,
Yes.
she shouts at him for leading the mission.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you cared.
Yeah,
What an ass.
exactly.
Yeah, that was quite a biting sort of comment. Yeah.
When I watched that, I thought, what an asshole.
I guess it was great
I
that
think-
neither one of them said anything about a woman, treating a man, being a woman.
No, that was all
None
irrelevant.
of that is. It's absent from the
It was
whole
academic.
series.
It was academic.
You
Yeah.
look at 1999, the cast, when they do the pan shot, very diverse. Isn't it amazing? We're actually talking about something so good. It's so
I was
diverse.
looking at that today. The cast is all over the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And believe it or not, some of the ones that they said never had starring parts were parts of the main cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
and in fact, he even had an alien character later on.
But
Yes, exactly.
But the thing is, this, did we care? Nah. It was just a good story, the good characters.
And that's what I love as well, because you know right away if you're going to, when you start to really care about the characters that early on in a story. And I found that with this particular episode as well. I really bonded with, the characters. You care about them. And that's pretty impressive, for a first run episode.
Yeah.
They're all really well fleshed out. Barry Morse as well. He's got that sort of sage-like quality about him. He sort of has a great deal of wisdom about him, and yet he's he questions things. He's human like the rest of them.
Yeah.
He's not sort of austere and standoffish at all. He's
what
quite
they would do with scientists now.
Yeah.
I'm brainy, you're just below me. That type of thing they do nowadays.
Yeah.
Whereas then he could be smart, intelligent, and actually still such a nice person.
Confident without being egotistical. Yeah.
Yeah, none of them are. Like the chain of command is absolutely prime, and nobody steps off their job. Everybody's like, I'm equal to you. This is my job. You know what I mean? It's so clinical and procedural. It's great.
And even if it's talking to someone who's their superior in the chain of command, it doesn't stop them saying, my job, I'm doing this. It's not a case of, like, for instance, the bit where the computer says human
decision required.
Everybody looked at him because he was a commander. And what did he do? He turned around and looked at the politician. He made the decision, but in effect, initially his reaction was also chain of command. Turned around to the
it's also too. I noticed that he was looking at the crowd. He was feeling the room for a few moments. So he took a good few beats, just feeling it.
Yeah. Can I ask a question of the panel? Who is your favourite character, or who was your favourite character when you were watching it growing up, or when you first saw it?
Clearly, the commissioner.
Oh, goodness.
So has everybody got their favourite characters? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I've got a couple in my head. Who's picking the order?
Right.
We'll go round robin.
Yeah, I think. Okay. I'll jump in and say I have. It's hard to pick one, to be honest, because they are all really, really good. But I really liked Barbara Bain's character, not just because she's a female lead, but again because of what I said before. And Adrian mentioned in the chat as well. She was calm and confident, and I just loved that energy about her. And I also liked the controller Paul Morrow's character, played by Prentice Hancock. I don't know why, but I just really liked his character, and maybe because it was such a different role for him than what I was used to seeing him in. So I really enjoyed his character as well. But you know, they're all great. Ask me 5 minutes from now and I might have another one. So Archer, Colin, what would you say your
when I was a kid, when I was young, well, I was a kid, I kind of hate to say it, but Tony Videshi in season 2.
That's what I was going. I liked him.
Yeah, I liked him.
Yeah, again.
But also, I mean, I quite like Alan, like Nick Tate's character. But I suppose probably the best one was Commander Kearney because he was in charge. But
yeah,
it's difficult to pick out because there were so many. You know, they were all reasonably well handicapped, with their own personalities.
Yeah, it's hard. It is. It's a really hard choice, and it comes down to what I guess what characters really just stick with you.
Yeah.
PJ, what are yours?
Well, I was going to go last since I answered the question.
Okay, so
if you wish me to go next, it's actually no real surprise. Obviously, season 2, my favourite was Maya. I just liked that character when I first saw it. Just this cool character that could actually change shape, I thought was. And she had a bit of a fun nature as well.
Yeah.
I liked Maya, and the same idea. I liked Tony as well. But in the first season, there was 3 characters that I loved. My favourite was Alan Carter, the Eagle pilot. Surprise.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. He was awesome. The second one was Paul. I really like Paul, and I definitely wanted a tash like that.
Yeah.
But I could never grow a tash at the time. My dad had a tash like that, so we were always trying to grow a tash when we were growing up.
Yeah, that is a serious tash. Fair play.
Yeah. See, my dad had a tash like that when we were growing up. Now, we always tried to. My brother actually, what we used to call bum fluff on his top lip for years. And I basically, mine's never grew in. And then when it started, it was basically a wee bit patchy. So, get rid of that. And my third one was Sandra. She was just gorgeous. So she was. So they were my 3 favourite characters. But I don't think in the first season there was a character I didn't like. You know, sometimes you've got a character you're meant to hate. And I don't think I came across one that I disliked. All the characters were, even though they had flaws, they were actually good characters. They weren't ones there you were meant to hate because even though the character was well acted, there's a character you're meant to dislike to drive the story. But there was none like that.
Sorry, and apologies to Roman, but it might be the politician.
Hey,
well, yeah, he was. I think he was one of
that. He wasn't an unlikable,
but
character.
He was, and that's the point. Yeah,
he was hiding the facts from people, but as a character, he wasn't the ha 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 ha.
Right? Yeah, no mustache twirling.
He was.
He had a dignity about him. Yeah, exactly.
No, he did. When I say he was just a guy trying to do his job, and I joke when I say he's my favorite character, but I do understand he was in a predicament. The right thing for him to have done would have been to report the issues, and then the program gets halted and maybe scrapped. But think about his position. He's also not just in charge of himself. He's got to look out for every other person who's working for this organization. If it gets scrapped, now they all have, now they're all out of work. So it was a bind. I think he went the wrong way with it, but I understand his moral dilemma.
And I could understand it as well, because it wasn't just a case of that. They were basically, if they stopped bringing it up to the moon, then what do they do with all that waste they're saying is still there? Because they were effectively saying that they were dumping all their nuclear waste and they had to keep it going because Earth had so much. So if they didn't dump it in the moon, where did they dump it? Somewhere on an island in the middle of... Do you see what I mean?
That does seem an extraordinarily dangerous thing to do, to store all that nuclear waste on the moon when the moon is so critical to the Earth's survival.
I would have put it in a rocket and just fired it at the sun.
Yeah.
Well, I think they were hoping it wouldn't backfire. So they probably thought, well, look, most of the moon's uninhabited, so it doesn't.
I think it just leaks radiation. It's not going to be a major issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And welcome to Mr. Brown's Alliance, who just popped in the chat.
Yeah, he heard us talking about him. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And hey, Jacob, as well. I think I missed you earlier when I was going through the chat, so my apologies. But it's I forgot where I was going with that now. My head's just gone away. But
I'm just wondering what Greta Thunberg would think.
What I would say is, if we keep going around to see what everybody's favorites are. Stephen, what were your favorite characters?
I could tell that there's going to be a lot of crossover with this question. And then I noticed that PJ basically said how all of the characters are likable, so he kind of mooted his own question. But I'll proceed anyway. I agree with PJ's trio myself. Both of the guys that were the action heroes, one in the comm station and another one in an eagle, almost in uniform all the time. And that darling Sandra. I don't know what it is, but I recall deeply inside of me that character when I rewatched the episode. She stuck out like a golden goose the whole time. So I must have had a thing, because I have a thing about her. Watching the episode, I had a thing about her. So
yeah,
but I'm mildly uncomfortable now.
See, normally they say you find a coin in a cesspit. In this, you find a coin in a box of coins.
Yeah. I was just about to say I remember everybody being just so on point. Like if anybody was saying anything, just some rando in the background was handsome, fit, capable, and on duty. It was just everybody was like just on it in this show.
And I think that's what's so admirable about it. And I think in a way that reminds me a little bit of classic Trek. All of the key characters, all of the main, characters, and for the most part, all the supporting characters were characters that you could look up to, in some way. And these characters, especially, even the one that we have to assume that they wanted him to be probably as close to a villain as you would be able to say that he was, which would be the commissioner. But he's still such an important character, and he's, as Roman said earlier, he's just trying to do his own job. So yeah, there's really nothing. There's no characters that I found unlikable. The only time that we're faced with, with being afraid of any of these characters is when the one character becomes infected with that virus and he tries to smash the glass, and they're sort of thrust into that life and death situation there, but again,
it's also also when they go nuts, it's like there's the concern where they're a danger to themselves as well as to others.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jacob had a good question. Do y'all think this show was overshadowed by Battlestar and Buck Rogers at the time? I think that's highly possible.
No, I think it was because where the two of them were action, and I think that was driven it.
Because I actually watched Battlestar.
Those shows were much later.
4 years later, yeah.
They were late 70s, whereas this was mid 70s.
Yes.
So did reruns then, maybe?
Roman, remember, you would have seen them all when they came out. We would have seen them all roughly about the same time, because by the time they come over from the States,
from that perspective, yeah. Like I said, but Battlestar and Buck Rogers for us were like, end of the 70s, maybe even early 80s. I have to look at my timelines.
Yeah,
but I
the
know
production was
way earlier.
It was 80s in the States, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think the two of them, when I suppose what we were classed as in reruns, they were actually, I think they took over from it because they were more action orientated.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was a case of people were seeing space battles. So,
yeah.
Well, it was the Star Wars effect, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but because Buck Rogers, as a Doctor Who fan, back in 1980, Buck Rogers absolutely kicked Doctor Who's ass in the ratings, sadly.
Which is quite a travesty, really, because I absolutely
but when Buck Rogers was...
Go ahead.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but I think they had the same reason for it kicked Doctor Who's in the butt, was it was action orientated, and anything you bring out something now and you've got something with a really good story or something with an okay story but it's very action orientated, people go to that because it's the visuals, the action, the space flights and stuff like that. And
it was the beginning of that kind of television. And it was sexy too. All the costumes were skin tight. There was dancing, there was music, it was very pretty looking.
Yeah, you had Wilma Deering.
And this was based more on 2001. You can see the influence of 2001 heavy in this, as we've discussed already, where those had a lot more other things to feed into them to get them to some of the weirder places they went, but in also some of the more action-oriented places they went.
With Buck Rogers.
There's a do anyone watch Red Letter Media?
Yes.
You must. Well, somebody does. Yeah. He did a brilliant one on Star Trek Nemesis, like the final film of the Next Generation cast, and he was kind of making a point that he was like saying, well, what is action? What is a good idea of an action? Like say, okay, this is an action movie, but it's like, well, what's a good action? A good example of action. He looked at this old episode of Next Generation Power Play, and he said, well, actually, I think this is better action because the action propels the plot. You actually get kind of, a thrilling kind of battle of wills between these characters. So the action punctuates, a good story. Whereas in Nemesis, it's excessive action. Excessive action isn't necessarily good action, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the same. It was the same argument between Babylon 5 and Star Trek, because Star Trek, when they were doing battles, it was usually one ship against another, or maybe if they were doing a big fleet, it was a massive fleet, and there was just hundreds of ships. Whereas in Babylon 5, it was usually like squadrons, so it was a smaller battle that you could orientate yourself around. So it was a lot more action orientated, Babylon 5, but it's small enough that you can actually understand what's happening, rather than just hundreds of ships getting in and blowing up, and you don't know where things are going. And I think that's a similar idea. What do you want to watch? Do you want to, at the time, people Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, the earlier Star Treks, they were obviously a lot smarter. And then Babylon 5 come along, which I love. I think it's better for me. It's far superior than the Next Generation. But I think it's that idea that one is more cerebral and one is, it's still a very good story, but it's got the action in it, which is more understandable. And I think that's where this lost to Buck Rogers and Battlestar, because of that. It's the same idea. It's the action just dragged on.
Well, for those sign with Benny Simps out there. She was actually she was actually the last person we heard from.
She signs off, doesn't she? She basically
in 1999. Hold on a second. There we go. She actually made a written called "Message from Moonbase Alpha."
I remember that.
Oh
God!
I've just put because
I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, she was, and she was. I think it was clipped from, but basically, it was a case of it was a case of clips and saying, it was sort of if you like a final message. We found a place. It was sort of a wrap up.
Yeah.
Sadly, she passed away in 2018.
Wow.
Yeah.
But,
I can remember that time that one message from Alpha, and it was basically just saying how they're continuing to travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A big thank you to Adrian. Take care. Thanks very much for all of your contributions in the chat as well. That was really interesting, and thanks for joining us.
Check out the books.
Yes, definitely check out his books on Amazon. Cool.
Sadako, did you have more to say?
No.
I've forgotten. Sorry.
We were talking about the Buck Rogers series and action.
No, it's just I was citing the basically it's just that a good action is when a story. I mean, for instance, this episode is probably a classic example. You could, like, every single episode after this, like the title sequence of it, nearly every episode after this tells this story in brief vignettes. Moon got blown out of orbit, but this is, if you watch it, this is still worth watching. Well worth watching because of the devil in the details and the way they get to that point. And
even though you know what's going to happen because it's in the titles for this one as well. But yes, I know what you're saying. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's the funny thing though, because it's in the titles as a cliffhanger as what's going to happen, and you might watch this episode thinking, well, obviously they're going to be in that predicament. They're going to find a way back to Earth. No, that's not going to happen. It's actually they're going to be traveling the stars forever.
Right. Yeah, this is the first episode of Space 1999, Lost in Space.
Yes. Lost in Space 1999.
That's true, yeah. Yep.
Just done Kubrick style.
Yeah.
That's a very good comparison, yeah.
Also, I think about the thing about the way things age and the way technology changes. In a way, looking back at this now, it like, because it's done in a different style, it looks very alien. The different kind of alien style, alien presentation, alien sets. In a way, it kind of, you're coming to it, and all seems alien. It kind of, in a way, that enhances the eerie feel of it all.
Yes,
the wilderness.
It's so advanced. When it first came out, it was trying to be so futuristic that it created almost an alternate reality of design.
Yes.
So even looking back from it in our age, we could see that that's a computer, that's a cell phone. It just happens to be engineered that way in this universe.
Well, one of the interesting things I think about this show is that I've seen comments from a few people that our cousins across the pond saw it and never realized it was not an American show. Because it was made with American money and the rest of it, and a lot of people, said, I hadn't realised it was Gerry Anderson. I actually hadn't realised it was a British-made show.
That's so sad.
But because all you had to do was look at the hero of Commissioner Simons, and it's a British-made show.
Commissioner Simons has actually got two quite important. Well, actually, he's got two quite important sons-in-law, because his daughter is married. One of his daughters is married to Frank Spencer, and was in real life married to the Equalizer.
Oh, Edward
Michael
Woodward.
Yeah, because his Michelle Patrice, who starred in another. Thank you. Yeah, was married to Edward Woodward.
Wow.
If I think both. Two, I think he had 3 daughters. Two, if not all 3 of them, actually went into show business.
I would imagine. Oh, go ahead, Wen.
Oh, sorry, Stephen. No, go ahead.
I would imagine that any American girl looking at this would be like, no, this has got to be British television. Like, most American actors don't look this good, aren't so handsome and charming in their, but they would immediately pick up on the accent of the characters,
Yeah, British characters of any, from any part of the British Isles were always, and Australian characters as well, were always very popular. In my experience, growing up, I definitely would have, gravitated and been interested in those characters for sure.
Does anybody think that Roman's character, the commissioner, actually looks, put a cravat on him, he'll look like Jason King?
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
Oh my God.
Just do a Google search for Jason King TV show.
Is it me?
Peter Wingard.
Why are his ears covered? Why does his hairdo cover
Let's
his
not
ears?
criticize his hairstyle. He was a hardworking man. He had a lot to do. He didn't have time to go to a stylist.
Yeah.
I thought he was very sort of, well coiffed. He looked like he'd actually had a personal stylist, if I'm honest, with his beard trim and everything.
I mean, he reminded me of like a medieval king or prince.
Exactly.
He had a bit of a Shakespearean look about him. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Guaranteed he was doing theater in between.
He does. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, he was a very accomplished actor.
Yeah. But it's this ears thing. I have this. Most women's hairstyles are designed to cover their ears in most cases, which is why the ear flip has become a thing, right?
Which is odd because they also tend to wear earrings.
Yes. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So to see a man with a hairstyle like that, it seems off. Most men do not cover their ears.
That's it exactly. It's like
most men weren't Commissioner Simons.
Except for that guy.
That's Jason King.
I still don't
that
know
is a
that
70s hairstyle.
Wow.
Just imagine things like the Persuaders or Men from U.N.C.L.E. That was around the same time, and he was a special agent.
Yeah,
for Her Majesty. Her Majesty.
That guy would be perfect for a live action Captain Morgan.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But that's who the commissioner always reminded me of.
Fair enough.
Well, he probably didn't have a fan underneath his desk. So,
hey.
He was probably overheated all the time.
That poor guy. All right, let's move on to my favorite characters. And no, it's not actually the morally complicated genius of Commissioner Simons. I like Commander Koenig a great deal as a military man. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't, it's hard for me to even remember. I think I actually liked Victor because of his sideburns. Don't ask me why. But watching it now as an elder gentleman, Commander Koenig, his ability to come in and take command of that station, not take things at face value, actually evaluate different crew members and what they were doing, and the entire situation, I thought was just very, very good and actually very realistic from a military standpoint. which is interesting. I mean, given who and wrote the show, who and the time period and all. So, and I thought that was he did a fantastic job. The writing for that character was very, very good.
Yep, definitely agree.
And do you know something that Mr. AWK hasn't even mentioned? The link between this and another link between this and Thunderbirds.
Go on then.
There was a brief bit with was it Shane Rimmer who did a voice?
Shane Rimmer.
Yeah.
Shane Rimmer was an Eagle pilot in this, and he did Scott Tracy in 1965.
Oh wow.
So
That's really cool.
One of the Eagle pilots, that was it. Just one episode and one and done.
I wonder if Gerry owed him money.
Probably liked his voice. He probably heard his voice when they were filming and they thought, "Ooh, he can have another one. We'll bring him in." And probably actually something happened. He's probably out because there was Eagle pilots in and out throughout the season.
Yeah,
and he probably was going to be one of them. And God knows what happened.
There were so many crashes. And in fact, do you know who's involved in the most Eagle crashes?
Alan, probably.
Nope. Koenig.
Is he really?
No, that's a nice piece of trivia there. That's an interesting piece of trivia, yeah.
That might actually be proof of plot armor as well.
Yeah, I mean, Alan's in a lot of them, but hold on, I lost it because I've lost the flip. So there was actually I don't know if it was Gerry Anderson YouTube did it, but it was a YouTube about who is in the most who's crashed the most Eagles. And it was involved in most of them. It was actually Koenig, if I'm right.
Just mindful of the time as well, because I can't believe it, but we're actually creeping up on 10 p.m. now. So we've had we've covered a lot of great discussion and a lot of great points in this. And I just was going to say, if we finish up with everyone's favorite characters, I think. Sadako and Alex. We just have to hear from them.
Yeah.
Mine's
this Victor. Victor. He was the approachable one. I feel like he was of the main cast. He was the one who seemed most approachable. He was the one who wasn't all business, if you know. Like he was almost like for me, he was kind of like the Scotty of this show. If you know what I mean? He was like the Scotty.
Yes. He was. And if this show was made today, I just have to say his sideburns would have their own Twitter account.
Yeah.
And rightly so, because they are magnificent.
Okay. On to you.
Yes, Sadako, I agree. He was a little bit Scotty, a little bit Spock.
Yeah.
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 And all sideburn.
Well, over to you, Mr. AWK, your favourite character.
Oh, I was going to agree with you there. Victor Berman was my favourite character all of it because he was like a Doctor Who type of character, what was said in the making. Mm-hmm. And he was someone that Coney could turn to all the time.
Mm-hmm.
For like science and all this. But I can't really say more because Sadako took the words right out of my mouth.
he probably would have been a good Doctor, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, he would have been amazing.
Yeah, man.
Definitely.
I'm blushing behind my avatar.
You can't tell because the sideburns are so big; it covers the side of your face. So.
With those sideburns and the commissioner's hair, wow, what a character!
No, you see, he doesn't need to turn his hair because he's got a Centauri's hairline.
Yeah, he does.
Oh, he does. Yes.
Yeah, and a little Membari as well. A bit Membari as well.
Oh, they're off.
Oh dear.
And they're off.
Explain a lot.
Somebody must have actually coughed in the street.
Something we haven't mentioned just yet. I mean, we mentioned it specifically about the episode itself in the series, that it takes place on September 13th, 1999.
Mm-hmm.
But the commander shows up And within a day or so, it's September 11th, 1999.
That's interesting.
Well, I think the show starts earlier than the blast
Yeah,
off of the moon itself.
Oh, yeah.
The blast
Yeah,
off
it
of the
starts,
moon is 13 September, but
Right.
the commander shows up a couple days ahead of time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it actually
interesting.
says September 9th at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. It actually first aired on September the 4th.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
That's
That's
a
fantastic.
shame
They
it
were,
didn't air in
they were
September.
preempting it. They were preempting it because they knew it was about to go out of orbit. So
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I mention it primarily because of a tiny bit of trivia about the novel of Frankenstein. And
Oh.
that is that his death, the doctor's death, happens on board ship at the end of the novel on September 11th, according to the diary entries.
Ah.
Oh.
Well, that's trippy.
So the both of them take place simultaneously, and it may even be in 1899, which would be really creepy.
That's very trippy. Yeah.
The interesting is that you said it about the show. There is a very good steampunk-ish sci-fi role-playing series called Space 1889.
Oh, is there?
Yes,
Really?
yes. It's
It's
like Doctor
steampunk.
Who having Victorian soldiers actually on the moon.
In fact, yeah, that episode could have been straight out of Space 1889. It's set around that period. Mars is a colony. Mars is basically Africa, because
wow.
you can actually sail to their universe. Is actually you've actually got the ether, and you can actually sail sailing ships to Mars, and breathe. It's still breathing it. You know the setting.
I love the steampunk universes.
Yeah,
And,
I mean,
you know, God bless
never
the
been a fan of
greatness of this world. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't even believe there's such diversity of imagination in this world we live in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've never been a fan of steampunk. I don't know.
Oh,
It's-
of course you haven't.
No, I just don't know why. It just never appealed to me.
It's got to be the right
idea
sort
of
of to
steampunk.
me. I must admit, yeah.
Well, it's Jules Verne was the start of that, wasn't it? It
Yes.
sort of had
I
that
love
same.
Jules Verne, I must admit, but I don't
Yeah.
know. It's something about the steampunk. I suppose it's just because I've seen so many steampunk alternative cosplays. So
Yeah.
That could very well be. Yeah, it sort of contaminates it a little bit. Yeah.
You've had the steampunk stormtrooper, you've had the steampunk this, the steampunk, and I never understood
Oversaturation.
it.
Overset. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that may
Kind
be
of like all the
that
Batman universes, too. It does the same thing.
Spider-Man
Mm.
as well. I just actually bought a Miles Morales cosplay for my friend's daughter because she wanted Spider-Man, but she wanted the Miles Morales one.
Oh,
Well, at least
Wow.
she didn't want the spot. At least she didn't.
Oh no,
want
she
the,
wanted the Spider-Man costume.
I was going to say she didn't want spider wheelchair user.
Or Spider Girl or Spider Gwen. She wanted Spider-Man. It's just
Taking
that
a
she
turn,
liked
taking
the
a
Miles
turn.
Morales costume. So.
The ship's going into the iceberg.
Yeah.
or is it? Doesn't that counteract their own argument?
Well, yes.
This is a young lady wanting to play a character that is obviously not her race.
Yes, but
Well,
they'll find a way
I
to-
was going to be Green Lantern this year for Halloween, and now I'm thinking about being Commander Simons. I just need a bit more hair.
Hmm.
I have the evil mustache and beard.
You'll have to dye it, though.
What
See,
do you say?
I
What do you
could be
say?
I could be Victor Bergman, but I would have to shave. I've got the hairline.
But which Green Lantern?
Yeah, you could do Victor Berggren, definitely.
Oh, I was going to be the Green Lantern, Hal Jordan Green Lantern from the Red Sun Elseworlds graphic novel.
Oh, nice.
You mean the only real Green Lantern?
Well, Hal Jordan, yeah, I like Hal Jordan is my favorite of the Green Lantern Corps, and I loved the representation of that character in Red Sun, where he's no kidding still an Air Force pilot. They reverse engineer the ring and they create a Green Lantern Corps.
Oh, wow.
That is no shit. No, I'm sorry, no kidding. V-chip. That is no kidding still military in operation. So they're wearing flight suits, flight jackets, goggles, and flying with the rings, and it just it's a very cool visual. So that's that's what I'm going to be. I'm not actually going to be Commander Simons. That's an awful lot of work. Or Commissioner. I'm sorry, Commissioner Simons. I gave him a demotion.
You just become a vampire. Then you don't have to change. You don't have to do anything at all. You just say you're a vampire, but you just don't have your teeth out yet.
That's not fun, Colin.
Okay. Can anyone bring up a shot of Ian McShane for a second, though?
Anyone
as Anton Zoroff?
I'll say he was in this. He was in there.
Ian.
Just like bring up Lovejoy.
Or Deadwood, or
American Gothic or American
yeah,
Gods.
Yeah.
John Wick.
John Wick.
Yes.
I don't know who's in that. Was he? Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Oh yes, I see the actor now. Yeah.
I love Ian McShane so much.
Yeah.
So he was in the series and he had similar hair to
Yes, he does. Yeah. And except his quite striking feature of those eyebrows.
Yeah.
You could take bottle caps off with those eyebrows.
Take bottle caps off with the way he can curse too. God, that man, when he gets going.
He paints with profanity like others use oils.
There you go. There's your
him in Deadwood is just priceless theater.
That's Anton Zaroff.
Wow. But who were in the Battle of Eyebrows between him and Peter Capaldi?
That was that's who I was channeling there when I said you could take bottle caps off of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Episode 1, season 9.
Right, we are going to start wrapping up now. Wendy, have you got anything coming up particularly?
Just at the moment, our next Let's Talk Geeky, on Saturday, and then Sundays, we will be premiering another horror movie called The Flesh and the Fiends on Mr. Hyde's YouTube channel. That is going to be the B Movie Cinema Show, and that one's going to be loads of fun.
Nice.
Okay, Colin, I know. We will promote ourselves afterwards, won't we?
Well, yeah, we've got the.
We make that announcement afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay. Roman and Stephen, what have you got coming up, please?
Oh, Dad, take it over.
Okay, so Thursday, I'm still trying to cement my topic for my 5 Pacific Standard Time show. I was thinking about doing the collective works of Philip K. Dick that have been made into films or television, and I'm still leaning towards that, but it may just be a complete rando show. It just depends on my mood. I've been occupied lately. And that's probably going to be it for me for a week, as the daughter of the Empire, whom I haven't seen since last Christmas, will be arriving in town on Saturday morning.
Oh, that's lovely.
That should be nice.
PJ, please, what have you got coming up, please?
Well, tomorrow we've got Wednesday night's TV and movies, and we're looking at the first episode of Space Above and Beyond. So we are. And then on Saturday we've got Let's Talk Geeky with me back. I don't know if that's a selling point or something.
Tim's going to be so disappointed.
He's got next Saturday, so he can do it then. But tomorrow is basically Space Above and Beyond, the first episode. We're going to discuss the season, but we're going to look at the first episode in particular.
Sadaku, what have you got coming up?
Nothing decided, but an old friend of mine, Dutch Doctor Who channel, is he's starting his new season soon of streams. And I did some really cool streams with him earlier this year. Actually, no, last year we did some streams on the personalities of the Doctor. So
his streams are really good. Yeah, they're very entertaining.
I saw those; they were really good.
Yeah, and hopefully, if he carries them on, you might see me there. or if not there, I'll probably be hopping onto PJ's stream if you're still happy.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
You're always welcome.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, well, right. So we will thank you everyone in the chat for joining us, and I'd also like to thank our wonderful panel for being here tonight. Also, a great big thank you to Wendy for being the chair host for tonight's show.
Brought some professionalism into it at last.
I hope so. I didn't feel like it, but
I did great.
And next Gerry Anderson episode looking to will be a episode of UFO where Steve Ransom will be chairing it for us.
Yay!
Ooh. When will that be?
That will be November.
Oh, cool.
Yet to be
Cool.
decided.
Did we come away?
Give me time to marathon it though.
It's only one episode, so Dark Earth. It's only one episode.
Yeah, but it's a great series. Marathon it anyway.
I actually enjoyed the Big Finish audios as well.
Yeah.
Of UFO.
Right. We will be back on the 27th. Now, this is going to be an interesting unplugged coming up. Further details will be released in the coming weeks. And it's going to be like a little game for us all, whoever wants to attend. But all I can say is that we are paying homage to the TV show The Prisoner. Further details will be released coming up, but when we announce more details and that, I like everyone in the chat to come and join in on this game because this is going to be fun. And as I haven't told PJ yet, he will be playing the role of number 2. With the entire panel.
I've always been a number 2.
I was definitely going to not make that connection, but
that means I can't wear my number 8 t-shirt.
Well, anyway, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and please feel free to leave a comment. And everybody, see you on the 27th. And take care, stay safe, and have a wonderful evening. And yes, there's the eagle.
That is
great, folks.
Good night, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.